They said, oh, you should have been offered that. And I said I wasn't. And they were like, oh, it's probably because of COVID. They just have less testing and less offering of all these things. I remember listening to your podcast and being like, you know what? No one's going to advocate for me right now during COVID. No one's going to ask me for it. There is probably so many people who are falling through the cracks in this whole process, in their whole pregnancy, because they're maybe like me, their first pregnancy. They don't know any different. They were never pregnant pre-COVID, so they don't know what it's like normal.
Giving birth is one of the most significant events of your life. Sadly, the joy that you should feel can often be replaced with anxiety and helplessness instead. As a labor and delivery nurse, I'm revealing insider information to educate you, reassure you, and decrease your fear. In this podcast, you'll hear empowering birth stories and experts weigh in on a range of topics. Being Jewish also has me exploring Judaism's influence on the reproductive experience. However, I speak to anyone wishing to navigate their journey with more joy and confidence. I'm your host, Chani Fingerer, and you're listening to the Happy Birthway Podcast.
And I was like, well, why couldn't I have tested it before? And they said, oh, you should have been offered that. And I said I wasn't. And they were like, oh, it's probably because of COVID. They just have less testing and less offering of all these things.
And I have to say, this is a great example, unfortunately, of where it's a secondary effect of the pandemic in terms of health outcomes, where it's not just affected people who actually got COVID and had severe disease and death from it, but there was a lot of stuff that, because medical visits were limited, in not just prenatal, but, cancer patients and so many other areas where people did not seek medical treatment because of the pandemic, where there was no availability. And this was, this was the fallout from the pandemic, so many, far-reaching effects of it. So this is a great example, yeah.
And it's exactly why I remember, literally, I think it was a bit earlier than this, but I remember listening to your podcast and being like, you know what? No one's going to advocate for me right now during COVID. No one's going to ask me for it. There is probably so many people who are falling through the cracks in this whole process of in their whole pregnancy, because that maybe like me, their first pregnancy, they don't know any different. They were never pregnant pre-COVID, so they don't know what it's like normal. But I actually have a lot of interest in the medical field. I always was very interested in midwifery and, I don't know, in like the healthcare system in general. I mean, I love medical dramas, so like I feel like I know a bit. So like I think of things and I'm like, okay, maybe this is not right, this is not on. I should like ask and ask and ask and ask. But there's totally people that I know, like they would just be like told something and be like, oh, okay, and accept it. But I just remember like thinking, no, I'm going to advocate for myself and be like, no, I want this, I need this, this is important. And they're like, oh, okay, fine, we'll do this for you.
That's why childbirth education, those who receive childbirth education have better outcomes. And this is why.
Yeah. But they need to be educated before they're pregnant to start with. Because how else would I have known? Like at the beginning I was like, no, I know I need to get tested for this blood clotting thing, I know I have anemia, I know I have all these things, like test me. And they were like, oh, okay, fine, but really with COVID you shouldn't really be coming into the hospital. And I'm like, yeah, but like I'm so scared of like anything, like of not going and like something else happens worse. Like
we need to use our critical thinking, and it's been so like stunted, where it was this black and white thinking of all we care about is preventing people from getting COVID, but what are the other effects of these policy changes on other areas where yes, maybe we're limiting more people, so we are decreasing the risk for transmitting infection, but again, we're decreasing the risk. We're not eliminating it completely. And what is that decrease in risk? How does that weigh against people not getting other tests that they need?
Totally, exactly. So then after that, I was referred to a fetal cardiologist clinic in a different hospital, not my local one. nearer like to central London, and that was like a really big hospital. I've never seen such a big hospital. Literally like needed a map to go around. And I remember sitting there for like 40 minutes. They had this fetal echocardiogram,
yes, which is a very thorough look. It's also through ultrasound. It's a very thorough look at the baby's heart anatomy specifically.
Yeah. So the lady there was so lovely and kind. Like, you really appreciate, like, in these type of scenarios, like, I've not had so much, thank God, issues that I've needed to have a lot of medical health, but they were really, like, they literally put, this lady, I remember, she put me so at ease. She was like, okay, there is some sort of, like, arrhythmia, but it's very common. She's like, my son even had it. Very often it goes away throughout your pregnancy. Sometimes babies are born still with it, but they grow out of it. If we feel like it needs to, like, but when the baby is born, that it still has it, then it'll just be monitored for an extra 24 hours with like probably have probably an echocardiogram. I don't know.
Yeah, just under a specialist, purview.
Yeah. So this is at like 25, 26 weeks. And she said, you know what, I want you to go in every week to your local midwife and just have it monitored. Literally 5 minutes just to have it monitored. And I was like, okay, you know what, that's like really put me at ease. She's like, no, not just for your ease, but like for us to know. And I was like, okay, fine. So she's like sent a letter to my local midwifery team. They never got back. Well, I was like emailed, like CC, but they never got back. So I basically had to fight for this. I called, like, I felt really bad. I called their bosses on them. I didn't really call their boss, but I called like the hospital that's like in charge of them. And I was like, I need this. And they're not offering it to me. They tell me that they don't have time. And that with COVID, like they have less time. And I'm like, I literally fought for it. And like, I remember somebody being like, just like told me like, it's fine. Just like, don't bother. They're not going to like give it to you. And I fought for it. And the first time I went there, my midwife was like, not very happy about doing this. She was like, oh, I'm very busy. And I'm like, I'm always going to be here on time. Like, they never waited for me or anything. Like, I went every Thursday at like 11 a.m. for like from 25 weeks till I gave birth. Every single week I was there. It was really like emotionally exhausting and physically exhausting. I had to get there, stay there. They usually ran late because these things always run late, and I had my 5-minute appointment, always like waiting for it to happen, like oh my gosh, how's it gonna be this week? But you know what, in like in hindsight, it's like I got to hear her a bit like every single week. Like, people don't get that because they don't need to.
Yeah, but this was a specialist recommendation also,
right?
And I'm sorry you got that pushback. I'm sure myself, as a healthcare professional in this specific area, I still would have felt bad, and I still would have been second guessing myself. Like, is this necessary? It's terrible.
Yeah, so she was like, oh, it's not necessary, like, I don't have time for this. The schedule's very packed, like, it's the local area is like a lot of firm people, so she's like, lots of women having babies. And I'm like, I know, but what can I do? This is all they,
like, this is your baby.
This is what they told me to do.
And I just want to ask you, like, if you weren't happy with their care, do you have in the healthcare system an option to switch to a different midwife or not?
Well, within the same team, I could have asked for a different midwife.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily have done that because I feel like they're like sisters, so they wouldn't be too happy.
Other, right?
Basically, but the first time she was like a bit like, but after that, I think because I was quite pleasant towards her, she warmed up to me. She's like, oh, how are you doing this week? And it was actually quite somebody who's like quite paranoid and what's it called, like when you're like really hypochondriac. It actually really soothed me to know that I was getting seen every week, even though it was just listening to the heartbeat and the Doppler. It literally did calm me. And then eventually, thank God, this was 25 weeks, by 35 weeks she didn't detect it anymore.
Wow.
So, which literally made me so happy. And she was like, yeah, it doesn't happen anymore. She's like the woman who detected it to start with, so she should know what she's talking about. So that made me really happy. So my daughter didn't have to be taken away from me for 24 hours after she was born, because it was already cleared, which thank God I was so grateful about. But in the meantime, every time I went, she used to like measure me with, which I call prehistoric tape measure, like measure my bump. And
which is done throughout every practice. Doctors,
is
midwives.
it
Yeah.
really? I think it's like, okay,
Yeah,
so
I
it
know
made
it's
me
funny,
stress.
but the amount of centimeters correlates with the amount of weeks of pregnancy.
Right. Yeah.
And
so
it's a less invasive way of measuring the baby's growth over an ultrasound, which both have a place, but it's less invasive.
So I do get why it's done. It reminds me a bit of Call the Midwife.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite shows. But like for the last 5 weeks, and I still went there every single week, she was like, okay, it's measuring small, like it hasn't grown. And I'm like telling her, like, I'm feeling pains in my ribs. I feel like it's really internal. And she's like, no, it's not growing. So she referred me to get a scan in the local hospital, like an ultrasound. So, and this was every Thursday when I had an appointment with her. So every Friday I'd have to go there for an appointment. I was really like nervous, like it's before Shabbat. But they were like, she was like, no, it's not growing. And I was remembering what this other lady said, the sonographer, about how it was small. So I was just very nervous. She's like, yeah, it's not growing. You're not growing. And I'm like, oh, okay, what can I do? Like literally nothing. But every time I went there, every Friday, they did a scan, and she was always like, no, it's fine. It's measuring fine. Literally but she still kept sending me back and back. And she's like, and I'm not going to be like, I wasn't going to be like, they said it was fine last week. Why am I going back again? Because I was just like, you know what? I don't want to say no to her when she like did me a favor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
so
and no, but also you don't want to have regrets. So yes, this is hard.
Definitely
this is
not.
A temporary thing in your life that takes extra time. But yeah, and just on this topic, we call this IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction. And, one of the reasons, first of all, the best way to diagnose it is to do serial scans. So not just like a one-time thing, oh, your baby's small, because we can track the growth. And if the baby's growth curve drops, then that's one of the ways to, to tell that this baby's not really growing inside of the uterus for maybe an unknown reason. But it's to help us determine, like, when should the baby be born? Maybe the baby will grow better on the outside. And we use research to generate that. Yeah.
So that's what happened. And she was always like, no, it's fine. I remember one of the last appointments, the midwife telling me, she's like, no, I'm telling you, it's measuring small. Don't expect more than, you work by pounds, right? Don't expect more than 5 pound baby.
Grams. When the baby is born, yeah, when the baby is born, we measure by grams, yeah.
Okay, so they do both. They tell you both here, to be honest.
Yeah,
so
we kind of do too, yeah.
Yeah, so she was like, don't expect more than 5 pounds. Buy tiny baby is like the size that the shops have here, that it's like smaller than newborn basically, right? She's like, buy tiny baby. And I was like, okay, fine, but you know what, I don't want to buy too many tiny baby because I want it to grow. So I just bought plain white ones, even though I knew I was having a girl. But I was just like, I'll buy a few white ones. And it's funny, so I was due 3 days after Tisha B'Av, and throughout the last couple of months of my pregnancy, I went to what's called Antenatal Classes with this really lovely woman. Anybody listening from London, I'll tell you her name. She was amazing.
What's her name?
Sippy Krause. She's great. She does what's called the Swiss method.
Yes, I've heard of
that.
Yes. Now, is this funded by the NIH?
No.
Okay.
No.
You have to be
NHS?
private.
No.
Yeah.
This
Sorry,
is
not
like,
the NIH.
Yeah. I don't think, maybe she's a doula, but she's not a midwife or something. I mean, she just does it from her house, and it's just like a bunch of like.
No, because
I'm really
wondering.
Nice.
I believe very much in funding prenatal education, which is not routinely done here. So I was just wondering if the NHS funds it. Not that
I don't
know.
They definitely have like pamphlets and stuff, and they could probably. I don't know what it was like.
Yeah, but not real hands-on.
COVID.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
I have no idea what it was like then. Even then, like I think my sister, like most people want to go to like a Jewish antenatal class here. So I went to this lady, and it was really, really, really lovely. She like taught us like things that I thought I knew. Like I thought I knew a lot, but I didn't know as much as when she taught us. And she taught us, and the other girls, like I remember, like a lot of them they didn't have a lot of knowledge. Like they didn't know what like an episiotomy was. They didn't know like what an epidural was. They didn't know any of these things, and it like really helped them. They were like, what's an episiotomy? They do that? Oh my gosh. And I'm like, but and also it was nice to get to know people from like the area having babies at the same time. Like now I'm still friendly with them. And from there I actually met somebody who went to an antenatal yoga class, and I joined it, and I definitely think it helped me. After that I bought myself a yoga ball, and I was bouncing, and it was so relaxing, and it also like literally I don't know, it made me like come into contact with my body. Like I just like, I don't know, I felt myself, like, you know, like in that moment. I can't describe it very well.
No, yes, it's body mechanics and learning your body, learning movement. And antenatal yoga, or prenatal yoga, how we call it here in the States, is very different from regular yoga. You have to move your body in different ways, and it facilitates birth, and it's a very different form of yoga. Not only is it safer, but it actually helps facilitate your body's capacity to birth and the making room for the baby. So, and it can help you with labor as well. So I
highly recommend.
And with common discomfort. So it's a different kind of yoga, and it helps you get in touch with your body, because you need to be in touch with your body when you're birthing. Yeah,
and she also taught us about perinatal massage, which I never even heard of before, and I really do also think that helps in me. And she also taught us about like lactation massage when the last couple of weeks of your pregnancy. She's like, you're going to collect liquid gold. Some people save that afterwards.
We call it colostrum harvesting.
Yeah,
before pregnancy, before birthing.
I couldn't imagine how it would work, but it actually did, and like that liquid gold came out. I didn't save it because I was just a bit like, I don't know how to do this, but there are kits that you can ask your local midwife to like to save it and to like freeze it, which apparently it's like got like the best nutrition that there possibly is for the baby. But I also think that doing that really helped me to when it came to feeding, like my baby's 7 months, and I introduced her like to solids at 5.5, but I still exclusively breastfeed. She's never had a bottle. She doesn't even know how to have a bottle. But obviously that happens. I mean, it's different for everyone, but I definitely think it helped me. I don't know, different, but to be honest, I highly rate that. So so I was due 3 days after Tisha B'Av. And I remember like a few weeks before asking, my husband asked the rabbi, being like, does she have to fast? And he's like, don't ask me yet. Maybe like, let's see a couple of weeks. I don't know why I put his accent on. And a week before, like, does she have to fast? He's like, yeah, she does. And I'm like, no. Everyone in my antenatal class got a heter from their rabbi but me. Like, there's 10 girls. And I'm like, what? I'm going to fast? Like, thank God I'm a good faster. And then my mum was like, you know what? You'll fast. It'll come out that night. Like, it happened apparently to my great-grandmother. She had my grandfather the night of Tisha B'Av because she fasted.
There was in Israel, there were studies done. There was a slight increase in births after. Yeah, it doesn't mean it will happen for everyone. And of course, you want to be cautious, because fasting can make you very dehydrated, which is not a good state to go into labor in. But obviously not having had food, but there is a slight increase in births.
Yes. So I was like, all the girls in my class were like, why are you gonna fast? And I'm like, that's what my rabbi said. Well, to be honest, I realized, because I was due before any of them, so I would have felt full time. I was just 3 days gonna be due 3 days later, so like it's not dangerous for me to give birth there, as opposed to some of them, which would have been 35, 36 weeks. It's not labor, right. So that's why I reasoned. I was like, yeah, my rabbi knows best. So Tisha B'Av was started on Motzei Shabbos Sunday. I don't remember this year. I think so. Yeah, Sunday. And I remember the whole Shabbat. I was in my brother's house. I was staying there because my parents were there and they had aircon. That's the main reason. It was hot, and I was 9 months pregnant, downing so much coconut water and all having dates and watermelon. I had everything that I could think of. And then I remember the fast. It was on a Sunday, and my niece, she's 20. She was like, I can't anymore, and it was 2 p.m. and I'm so chilled. I didn't feel anything. It literally was my easiest fast. First of all, everyone didn't let me no one let me lift a finger, so that was also great. I just sat down there. It was very, very chilled. And then waiting, Tisha B'Av came out. The whole night I was like, something's gonna happen tonight, something's gonna happen. Nothing. And I was due that Wednesday. Nothing. I went to my midwife appointment on Thursday, and she's like, we'll do something, I don't know if you guys call it a sweep, it's called, because she said I was very low down. And I remember that pressure. My gosh, it was like, oh, couldn't anymore. Yeah. So she did a sweep. She's like, oh, that was a really good sweep. I mean, I don't know what classifies as a good one, but I was just like, okay. I remember thinking she was so gentle. I was like, wow, like, do as much as you think you need. Like, I want this baby out. It's too hot. I can't anymore. Like, late July. And then also she told me to go for a scan. So I went in for it because it was small.
Before we continue, I wanted to let you know about a revolutionary diaper brand called Diaper, D-Y-P-E-R. These eco-friendly diapers are made with viscose from bamboo, so they're soft on your baby's skin while still being extra absorbent to handle your baby's biggest accidents. Diaper wants to pass on the savings directly to you by cutting out the middleman. They ship your diapers to you for a low, predictable price with no extras or gotchas. Set your subscription and let them deliver the exact quantity you need. If you need more, they'll deliver them promptly with their exclusive SOS service. If you need less, send them back with a prepaid label. You can precisely manage your deliveries using their website or their mobile app. One of the products that I think is really cool is their diaper sense. It's a small sensor that you attach to your baby's diaper, and it continuously monitors the temperature and humidity surrounding their skin. It will help you optimize your diaper changes, reduce overall diaper use, and may help reduce instances of skin rash due to prolonged exposure to moisture. All you do is snap it to the outside of the diaper and connect it to Diaper's app. It will notify you when number 1 or number 2 happens. Subscribe through the link in my show notes and you will get a free bonus diaper bag just for trying them out. You can cancel anytime with no obligation, but still keep the bag. KiwiCo crates are a monthly subscription of crates that come filled with age-appropriate STEAM projects for kids, from toddlers to teenagers and even adults. STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Every crate explores a different theme designed to spark creativity, thinking, and learning. All projects, inspiration, and activities are created by a team of product designers in-house and rigorously tested by kids. KiwiCo offers all different product lines spanning a variety of interests and age ranges. Panda Crate is for babies from 0 to 24 months. Each crate helps babies learn by doing what they do best: playing, exploring, and most importantly, interacting with the people in their lives. Crates arrive every other month and are filled with 2 months worth of content. So if you're trying to figure out what a developmentally appropriate way to interact with your baby is, Panda Crates will take the guesswork out. For an exclusive 30% off discount on your first month subscription, go to kiwico.com, that's KIWICO.com, and enter code LEARN30 at checkout. That's kiwico.com, code LEARN30 at checkout.
So I went in for a scan on Friday and they're like, no, it's not small, but your placenta is deteriorating and we think you should be induced. And I was like, oh no. But we'll schedule it in, come Sunday night in, and we'll induce you Monday. So that whole Shabbat, I was just like, it's going to happen on Shabbat for sure. No, nothing. Mm-hmm. And then Sunday evening, I literally remember saying bye to my family, be like, next time I see you guys, I'll have a baby. Mm-hmm. So I went in Sunday night with my husband, who had to take a COVID test before and wasn't allowed to leave until we left. Like, we both had to take COVID tests. We weren't allowed to leave the building until we were leaving with the baby, basically, because of COVID. And they did, so they got me, so I got there and they measured me. She said, you're 1 centimeter dilated already. And I was like, amazing. Like, she's like, don't feel any pains? I'm like, nothing. I'm waiting for, what's all this contractions everyone's going on about? I don't know what that means. And she's like, okay, fine. We're going to put some sort of, see, this is why I don't remember the name. Mm-hmm. She's like, we'll put some sort of gel there to soften your cervix. And we'll see what happens in the morning.
Mm-hmm. It's not used, like, I mean, I at least where I worked and from my friends, it's not used commonly in my area. Again, that's not to say in other areas in the U.S. It's called PG gel, but what it does is it ripens the cervix. Yeah.
Yeah. Something, yeah, exactly. She never actually told me the name. Like I said, they never tell you the names. And then the next one, I literally remember like waking up at 3 a.m. being like, oh my gosh, has anything happened yet? I'm like so desperate. Like, I knew that something was happening tomorrow. I was just so excited. And my husband was in like the little camp bed that they put for him, snoring away. And I was like, like we went to bed at like 10:30, and the next morning he didn't wake up till like 7. And I was like, he's like had a proper good sleep. And like I was up from 3 looking at my watch being like, when is it 7 o'clock? Because I knew that the midwife would come in at 7 to like to
reassess everything, check
reassess everything. And then she's like, you're 1.5 centimeters. And I was like, no, only half.
Did they warn you about that? It takes long in the beginning.
Yeah, for the whole, I mean, I'm the youngest of 5 and my husband's also the youngest of 5. And so all our siblings are married and they're all like, yes, the first one took me 3 days of labor, this one.
Yeah, and not just the first baby, but actually early labor can take a long time, because remember, they're doing to your body in a shorter amount of time what your body may be doing over several weeks. So, it can take long, yeah.
So this is what anticipated. I remember being like, they were like, oh yeah, it might happen today, it might happen tomorrow. So I was like, okay, fine. So then the doctor comes in at like 9 a.m. and he's like, I'm gonna assess you. He said I was 2 centimeters or something. And he's like, I'm gonna see if I should break your waters. And I was like, okay, I don't know what he's doing. So he has like this long blue plastic thing. And he was just on the side. I didn't want to look because, like, not that I'm squeamish, I just was like, yeah. Also, I think I wasn't even wearing my lenses. I was wearing glasses and I didn't see what was going on. And then suddenly I felt a poke and whoosh. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, you told me you were going to think about it. He's like, yeah, that's what I always say. And he broke them. And yeah, that was at 9 a.m. And at 9:15 a.m. I got my first contraction. And I remember doing the breathing techniques for the first about 45 minutes that I learned in my antenatal classes, like, and I literally remember it, and my husband laughing his head off, being like, you're mad. I was listening to some like recording of the teacher like teaching us how to breathe, and I was like, yeah, this is like period pains, a bit worse than period pains, but I can handle this. And like, I have pretty bad period pains. Yeah, no, that didn't last very long. After about an hour, I was like, oh my gosh. So I also, throughout my whole, I remember like when they talk to you about, like, they don't call it birth plan, they call it birth hopes or whatever. I remember saying, I don't want an epidural. My sister swears by them. She walks in, she's like, where's my epidural? Okay, now. Whereas I was like, I know, because I wanted to be able to walk around and do different positions and go on a birthing ball and like the things I had learned in my antenatal class. And I also, yeah, I didn't want to, and I remember, like, she also basically, she was telling us how, like, it makes you drowsy, you can get headaches, and I was like, no, I don't want to feel like this. I will go through the pain. Like, I considered myself to have a high pain threshold, but, like, obviously that goes out the window when you go through contractions. You don't know what that means after that, like, as in, like, out the window. But it was, like, so, like, I started at 9:15, my contractions, and about, like, 11, I was like, oh my God, this is mad, like, this is so painful. And I was like, my husband was like, you should start with epidural, just ask for it. And I was like, no, I'm like no, it'll be fine. And at 11:30 and then the midwife was like, she was amazing, so she was literally with me the whole time, like holding my hand, holding my arm. Really? Like, I was like, I'm gonna break you. She's like, no, you're not gonna break me. I'm like, I'm gonna break your arm. She's like, I'm not, you're not. At 11:30,
and this was not one of the midwives that you had seen.
No,
this is a midwife that's strictly working in the hospital.
Yeah, till that morning I'd never met her in my life, but honestly I remember her name. It's funny how her name was something I couldn't pronounce, but she's like, call me Osa, like it's short for like a longer name. And I remember thinking afterwards when we named our daughter, her name is Aurelia Sarah Ohana, and I'm like, oh, the initials are Osa the other way around. And like, if I ever see her again, I'll tell her. But
that's so cute.
Yeah, that was not intentional, it just happened. So at 11:30 she was like, should we reassess? Should we get an epidural? And I was like, I think so. I was literally, the whole time, by the way, I forgot to mention, gas and air was my best friend.
Yes, I remember nitrous oxide, and it's very widespread in the UK. They use it a lot, and I think that's one of the reasons why the epidural rates are significantly lower in the UK.
Yes, I literally just listened to your podcast about this like a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, exactly. I didn't even know it was called nitrous oxide. We literally just call it gas and air. It's kind of like a pump on the side of the bed, and it has like this plastic nozzle thing that you put your mouth into, and like you just like squeeze it when you want the air. And I remember like cracking it with my mouth.
I know, right? Yeah.
Thing, because they change it for each person. But I was just like my husband, that was his job. He held the thing up so I could just put my mouth there whenever I wanted. So I was literally using that the whole time. makes you delirious, said actual rubbish. I remember telling the doctor, I was like, why did you want to do this in your life? Like, what made you want to become an obstetrician? He's like, no one's ever asked me that before. Yeah, so like at 11:30 I was like, okay, maybe we should have an epidural. Like this pain is just mad.
Pregnancy and birth take a huge toll on your pelvic and abdominal organs. 1 in every 5 women in the United States suffers from some form of pelvic organ prolapse. There are very few pelvic support belts for women with a prolapsed uterus, vulvar varicose veins, pubic symphysis, drop bladder, etc. that exist on the market today. The products that do exist lack in comfort and fit. That's why Braceability has made it their mission to create a supportive, effective, and comfortable pelvic brace. After months of research, development, and testing, Braceability now introduces the brand new Pelvic Pro. It's an undergarment that's created to relieve aches and pains associated with pelvic floor dysfunction through innovative compression therapy. It's designed to keep you active and on the go. The Pelvic Pro helps alleviate the feeling that everything is going to fall out of the bottom. Braceability also has a huge array of pregnancy and postpartum belly wraps to support you through pregnancy and birth, including C-section abdominal binders. Click on Braceability's link in my episode show notes and enter Happy Birthway to get an exclusive discount of 15% on your whole order. Having a fussy, nonstop crying baby can take all the joy out of motherhood. Is it gas? Is it constipation? Is it colic? It's hard to know, but there is a solution for all of those. Happy Tummy is a waistband that comes with an herbal pouch. When you microwave the pouch and apply the waistband to your fussy baby, your baby is instantly soothed. That's thanks to a natural formulation of herbs including flaxseed, chamomile, lemongrass, peppermint, spearmint, and lavender. Happy Tummy is all natural, no drugs or drops. And not only does it quickly soothe your baby, but it smells terrific. Happy Tummy also has adult-sized waistbands, which mothers love for cramps, stomach aches, and back aches. Use my code HAPPYBIRTHWAY for 10% off your whole order on happytummy.com. That's HAPPITUMMI.com, code HAPPYBIRTHWAY for 10% off.
So she's like, okay, I'll go ask the anaesthetist. And she's like, oh, she came back like 2 minutes later. He's in theatre right now.
Which is
can't
the
help
operating
you.
room, yeah.
Yes, sorry, yeah, operating room. So I was like, okay, fine. And then at like, I'd say like 5 to 12, 10 to 12, 11:50, she's like, okay, I'm gonna assess you again.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, check you. I'm like, you're 4 centimeters. And I was like, 4 centimeters. I have to do this more. Like, they're like an hour a centimeter, basically. I have to do this for 6 more hours. I'm like, okay, I definitely need that anaesthetist. Like, this is like not happening, mate. And I'm like, okay, fine. Then at 12, because she's like, oh yeah, he's not available yet. 12, she's like, why are you doing that face? And I'm like, what face? And she's like, you're doing a pushing face. I'm like, I'm doing my pain face. My face is like, I'm like in pain. She's like, okay, 1 second. So she's like, goes out and she comes back like 5 minutes later, and she's like with the doctor. He's like, all right, Tanya. He was like Italian. He's like, time to push. And I'm like, what do you mean time to push? He's like, you're 10 centimeters. I'm like, but at 5 to 12 I was 4. And she's like, I don't know, but you're 10 now.
So she checked
and I'm
you.
like,
Who checked you, the midwife or the doctor?
the midwife checked me at 5 to 12.
And you were 10 centimeters.
I was 10
to 12 you were 4. 10 to 12 you were 4.
And then at 5 past 12, I was 10.
15 minutes later, yeah. And you know what? I have to tell you, this is a great example of a cervical exam is just will just tell us where you are at that moment in labor. It's not going to tell us, like you said, it's going to take you 6 hours more to get to 10. There's no way to predict that. And if you're having hard contractions and you're still changing slowly, it doesn't mean that those contractions are not working for you. They may just be working for you faster later on.
Yeah, so basically what happened is that they broke my waters and the contractions started like 15 minutes later, and they were a minute apart from the get-go. They were so strong from the beginning. They built up in terms of pain, but the time was like, it wasn't like half an hour between them, 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
It was very close, yeah.
Very quick. So I think they wanted to induce me, but they didn't even get a chance to, basically,
because your contractions were too close together, yeah.
Basically. And they were like, okay, start pushing. And I'm like, and my husband was like, well, what about the epidural? He's like, and my midwife was like, no time for epidural now. And he was like, yeah. So I started pushing at like between 5 past to 10 past 12, and she was born 12:15.
Wow. Okay. You are going to have a lot of haters right now listening to you because a first-time birth. This went lovely for a first-time birth. I mean, I hope you're okay with the fact that you didn't get an epidural. I guess you didn't want one.
Yeah, I was so like.
Some people actually
relieved.
who want one from the start, like maybe, was it your sister or your sister-in-law? Whoever?
My sister.
She
yeah,
may have
she's
been
always
really angry and upset that she didn't get it, if that's what she had in mind. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, but she goes in with like the plan of having one, like give it to me now.
Yeah.
But
sometimes we'll have patients that want it, and like you said, like the anesthesiologist will be in the operating room and unavailable for the next 30 minutes, and then they're giving birth before, and they're angry that they didn't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know somebody that happened to. But what happened was, I remember those 5 minutes were like, it felt like way longer, but it was what it was. And I remember I literally was so delirious from the gas and air, and I was like, so much pain. I think my husband tells me what happened, like, because I don't really remember it properly. Apparently, the doctor was like, we can do this quickly, or we can do this, like, will take longer. If we do this quickly, I'm going to need to use something on you called a kiwi. Yeah, do you know what a kiwi is?
That's a vacuum.
Yeah, like
and
a ventouse.
The brand that makes it, one of the brands that make it, the popular brand is called Kiwi. So we call it a Kiwi. Yeah.
It's a tiny weeny thing.
Yeah.
And then he's like, but I need your consent. And I'm like, I don't remember this. My husband was like, do what you said that. I said, do what you need to do. Just, I want it out.
Did he explain to you why you needed a vacuum? Because that's like an intervention.
I think he said that if we want to do it quickly, you can do this. I don't remember though.
So interesting.
Apparently, I did give my consent, but I literally have no recollection.
Like what? So a lot of times we'll do it because the baby's in distress or because the mom's been pushing for a long time. Like we won't do it from the get-go. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They had those monitors on my stomach the whole 3 hours, and that was the most painful thing. I was like, take these things off. It's like having a really bad stomach pain with belts on. Yeah. I was like, why are they on? They're like, oh, it's monitoring the baby. I'm like, that baby's fine, take them off. Yeah. But so when it went, so in the end, they had this kiwi thing, which I didn't even realize until like they gave me the baby straight away. I remember learning in my antenatal classes about like, oh, like you should ask for delayed cord clamping and skin to skin straight away, so have these on your notes because you'll probably forget about it in the moment. And I literally remember in those 5 minutes of pushing, I was like, please give me delayed cord clamping, please do skin to skin. And they were like, don't worry about that now. And I was like, just don't forget it. And so they gave me her straight away, and I was like, wait, why is her head like a bit pokey? Like, is that normal? And they're like, oh, it's from the kiwi. And I was like, the what? And I literally had no recollection. Yeah, and so that was amazing. And I remember, like, you know, like in the movies, you're always like, oh, waiting for the cry. As soon as she was out, she screamed.
Yeah,
Baruch Hashem. I was so relieved. I was like, oh, it gave us like a bit of a taste of what was the 2.5 months of colic to come. But yeah, And then after that, like, so I remember, like, nobody talks about the pain of afterwards of. I had stitches. I only need one stitch, but that like local anesthetic. You call it local anesthetic, like when they put like
lidocaine.
Yeah, that was more. I feel like that was more painful than the birth. I was just like, oh, that was bad. But thank God. And then it was good. She actually latched on straight away, like from like they cleaned her up a bit, and then she was on for like 3 hours. And then is when the fun started. Okay, so like they took her away. They were like, oh, we'll dress her now. And I was like, okay. And my husband was playing with her. And I was like, I'm going to go to the bathroom because I need to go to the bathroom. Went to the bathroom. I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to like wash my face. But I was like, whatever, I'll do this later. I came out and I was like, the midwife was there and another midwife was there because they were like cleaning the baby. And I was like, I think I need to sit down. And they were like, okay. And then I fainted.
Yeah. This happens quite frequently.
Yeah, I had passed just when I was in the bathroom. Like,
so they didn't help you in and out? Oh my gosh, I stay near my patients for that first time, like so close, because I'm so scared about them, like falling over the toilet and banging their head.
They should have done. I mean, lucky that I didn't have any issues there. I had like really, like, it's like really like TMI, but like I had like big blood clots like the size of like a grapefruit, like 2 of them. When I just came out when I went to the bathroom, and then I went, and then I fainted, And then I remember telling my husband, because my husband's also really like nervous. I'm like, Yakov, I'm fine, don't worry. And he was like, I could tell that he would be really worried. I'm like, I'm good. And then they literally yanked me up, the two midwives, and like plonked me onto the bed. And I remember like them yanking me, and like for a month or so afterwards, I realized I had really bad muscular pain, because they pulled a muscle between my ribs, like my intercostal muscles. I mean, I know they were trying to save me and everything, but I had to go to I went to osteopathy for that afterwards. It was really bad. And I remember like I couldn't bath my baby. It was just bad. But thank God that's fine. And then apparently I fainted again when I was on the bed, and they like raised my legs and they gave me which was good that I had an IV port already in for like the anticipated epidural, but they used it for like, I remember them squeezing saline into like my veins or whatever it was. And I was very curious. I asked my midwife, I was like, what did my blood pressure go to? Because I know it's usually quite low. And she's like, I'm not going to tell you. And I'm like, tell me. She's like, it went to 56. And I was like, yeah, no wonder I fainted.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was mad. But then
was it from a postpartum hemorrhage?
No, what I gathered from what they told me is that I normally have very low blood pressure, and then when you're pregnant, your blood pressure always raises a bit. So mine raised to normal when I was pregnant. So as soon as I was not pregnant anymore, it lowered, and also all the gas and air. I think it lowered my blood pressure too much. It can make people nauseous. It didn't really make me nauseous, but it lowered my blood pressure.
Also, getting up for the first time can, you know, cause that, like all the blood rushing, you know, from your head. So, yeah, I mean, I was just curious because a postpartum hemorrhage can cause that as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank God I didn't need
extra
any plasma. No, thank God. I was really relieved. But my doctor did say, he's like, if you want to go home tomorrow, Tanya, you don't do this funny business again. And I was like, okay. Because I wanted so much to go back to my family, because they couldn't come see me because of COVID. And I was like, I just want to go home.
And the UK has like pretty early discharge, more so I think than the US. How long did you stay?
Yeah. So it was Monday. I had her at 12:15 midday. I went home 4 p.m. Tuesday.
Oh, so you had more than 24 hours.
Yeah, I think because I was waiting for them for like 4 hours to do discharge papers.
Is that standard? Is that standard? Because I don't know why I was under the impression. I mean, my guess maybe because you fainted and they wanted to look at things more closely.
I think it was just like the standard is 1 night.
Some people go home 6 to 12 hours after they give birth in the UK.
My sister-in-law went home 8 hours later. I don't know how she did that. Like, some people stay longer, some people stay 2 days. It depends. Like, if you have a C-section, if there's complications, like, it depends. The standard is definitely 1 night, usually. My sister-in-law, like, they asked her if she wanted to go home, and she was like, sure. But the standard is usually 1 night, I'm pretty sure. But, yeah, so that was that. And, like, thank God, I remember my midwife being like, it's your first, right? And I was like, yeah. She's like, what did you do? Like, tell me what you did. And I was like, I did a lot of ball bouncing. She's like, so she told me, like, please God, for next time, she's like, as soon as your waters break, you come in straight away, because you are quick from when your waters break.
Yes.
So
and typically second labors are quicker, and somebody who has had a really fast labor in the past, they are much more likely to have a fast labor in the future. Not always, but much more likely.
Every time is different, I suppose. And then one funny thing happened. I remember, like, the next morning, because they do shifts, the midwives. So, like, after 8 p.m., you get a new midwife. And the next morning, I had, like, it was like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., I don't know, before the midwives of 8 o'clock would come in. So she came to, like, just check on the baby, check on me, and my husband was there putting on his tefillin. And she's like, ooh, you're Orthodox then. Like, she wasn't Jewish. And I'm like, yeah, we're Orthodox. And she's like, so how many do you have at home? And I'm like, no, this is my first. And she's like, oh, okay. And I was like so surprised. She was like, oh, yes, I love Israel. And I was like, okay, good to have some good stuff there. Yeah, so all in all, like, thank God, I mean, everyone has different, obviously you know this, everyone has different experiences, but
when you went home, home, did you have home visits from a nurse?
So day 3 and day 5, the midwives come and they weigh the baby and they look at if you have stitches, and they feel if your uterus has gone down. and they look at the baby and they ask you questions and they see where the baby slept and everything, and like if it's ventilated area, if it's like, cause the horror stories that the midwife was like, yeah, well, this is normal. We've like, as in like, we do these questions because we've seen babies like sleeping in like a drawer, like we've seen all sorts, right? Which is great.
But overall,
and
they just get an overall look of making sure that it's a safe home and that everything is functioning in order. I believe,
and that was the same midwife that I saw throughout my pregnancy. She's the one that came to my house.
Right, so you already had a relationship. Yeah, I believe that everyone in the U.S. standard should have like a home visiting postpartum nurse. So and you didn't have to go to the pediatrician in those first few days.
The pediatrician comes the day of, depending on what time you have the baby in the hospital, and they do a hearing test and they do a bunch of tests. But my mom said that it's very different now than it was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, you go into the local community midwife center and you can do like lots of like as much as you want. They any questions that you had, they would have answered. They weighed the baby there and everything. But now during COVID, everything is very different. I hope that it goes back to the way it was before. They was very involved and very much like the midwife is there for you, and like for every step, for every question, they have like an open house basically once a week where you can come in and like talk to other mothers and everything.
Is it like clinic? I like call the midwife, call the midwife.
Basically like that, but yeah, this doesn't exist currently.
Yeah. Well, you know, because in the U.S. standard is 1 to 2 days after you come home from the hospital, you go to the doctor, to the pediatrician, and many women find it very stressful getting out and everything. And it's so nice to be able to have a nurse just come to your home and do the same things because the things that are done in the pediatrician that day can be done at that visit, can be done at home by a nurse. And if there were any issues, obviously you would be referred out. But even just the breastfeeding help if you need it, I think that it's so valuable. It's so valuable.
And I realized it's really good. I couldn't imagine going out of my house, and I was just like all over the place. They also do something called like a heel prick test on the baby at the time, and they inspect the umbilical cord site.
Yeah, the heel prick test. Yeah. And they do what? What was the second thing you said?
They inspect the umbilical cord site to see if it's okay, basically.
Yeah.
And they look at the nappies and stuff like that. But yeah.
No, that's great. That's amazing. I wish we had that, and I think it's also money saving because a pediatric visit costs a lot more money than having a visiting home nurse come to the home, and also you know, with the breastfeeding, helping out with that because people don't have access to easy lactation help, and then after those 2 visits, like if you have any questions or anything like that, is it true that like you can call and ask for more visits or call a nurse or a midwife? So
you can after the fifth. If the fifth day, if they feel like everything is fine, they discharge you and they put you through to something that's called a health visitor, which you can have like up to age 5 for the kid. And then you can call that. So she comes at like, I think she came at like 9 weeks or whatever it was, or a bit before that. And like they came twice, probably like 5 weeks and 9 weeks or something. I could get wrong, but something like that. And she's not a midwife, but she's what's called a health visitor, and that you can be in contact with. They have a number. They give you a number, and you can call them for any issues that you have.
And that's for you and for baby.
Yes.
That's lovely.
Mainly for baby. There,
Yeah, but just like, you know, I don't know if you're a pediatric, if someone has like a laceration and they're concerned about healing or whatever, you know, any postpartum concerns. So they're the ones that do it, not the midwives anymore.
I don't think they were so concerned about me. It was more about the baby. I think you could still go to call your midwife if you still had any issues about that.
But standardly, there's no like postpartum appointment after the 5 days?
You do go to see your GP at like 4 weeks.
Oh, interesting.
And they legit only felt my belly and did a blood pressure, and that was it. But that was it. I suppose if you have more issues, then they would have been more thorough about it, but there was no need, thank God. So it was pretty basic like that. But yeah, I mean, every system has its flaws, and definitely with COVID doesn't help anything, but I managed to feel supported throughout, which was really important to me, especially since I live far away from family.
Yeah.
So I really wanted, like, and you're not sure, and you don't know because you have no clue. It's your first time, like you don't know what to compare to. But I was very grateful for what the NHS did for me when I went throughout my pregnancy and what they had there available for me, because I was just, in need. So it was good.
Wow. We're going to send this podcast to the NHS so they can, do publicity.
There's like millions of them. I doubt that I've listened.
Know. I'm being sarcastic, I had to.
Yeah, cool.
Wow. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us and for for sharing your birth story. I'm sure a lot of people have what to gain from it and will hopefully be encouraged to advocate for themselves and to listen to their intuition and to listen to their gut and to educate themselves as much as possible and not to be scared to ask questions and to ask for appointments even if they're being rebuffed. And thank you so much for it was really interesting to hear about the different things, the good and the bad.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And never be scared to ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and it's all for the best, don't worry. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Happy Birthway podcast. Head over to Yoledet Academy on Instagram to continue the conversation. You'll find the link in the episode show notes, as well as links to any additional resources, products, and services mentioned here. If you love listening to this show, you can help it grow by sharing it with your friends and rating and reviewing it. To stay in the loop when new episodes are released, make sure to subscribe. Remember that your health needs are unique and require individualized medical advice. The podcast is not a replacement, and some of the information may not be appropriate for your specific circumstances. My mission is to educate you so that you can confidently collaborate with your healthcare team. I believe that a healthy mom and healthy baby are simply not enough. We also need a happy mom with an empowering birth experience.